I do this for my culture, 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 culture. I do this for my culture, culture, culture. I do this for my culture, culture, culture.
And welcome back to For the Culture here on WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org. Absolutely the voice of the community. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for checking in and riding with me tonight. Folks, I am very, very excited because we're going to have a much-needed conversation about something that we have some understanding of, and I'm saying some of us have some understanding of, but then at the same time, we still need to get greater understanding and more compassionate about that will lead to us learning how to manage and really deal with the situation. What am I speaking of? I'm speaking about anxiety. I'm speaking of emotional disorder. And this is the big topic with my next guest. He is a former Motown recording artist, and he is a new author of the book Give It One More Try, as he talks about the issue of anxiety and overcoming anxiety and emotional disorders. And we're happy to have him join us here on For the Culture here on WEAA, Mr. Clarence K.D. Mcnair. K.D., good evening, brother. How are you, sir?
Good evening, good evening. Oh, man. First of all, it's an honor to be on the show with you. I'm actually doing great. Today's been really good, actually.
I hear you, brother. Well, we're happy that you are joining us this evening to have this very, very important conversation, and more importantly, to give us some understanding about this situation of overcoming anxiety and emotional disorders. Talk to us a little bit, KD. First, you are a recording artist.
Yes, I was signed to Motown. I was a part of the R&B group Prophet Jones.
Prophet Jones?
Yes, definitely. PJs. And after my music career, man, I started, we lost out. Once we put our album out, the last album we put out, we ended up losing our deal, man. And, it led me on a whole different path and a whole different journey. And that's where my journey with anxiety started after my Motown days of being a recording artist.
So talk to us. I mean, you guys have put out a number of songs out there, brother. You said that's where it started. Was there a particular incident that you can remember that kind of set things off, or was it just like a culmination of events?
Well, actually, so this is the interesting part. I suffered anxiety before I even got into the group. And what happened is once we lost that deal, man, it just kind of took me back to a place of youth, and all of these different feelings and emotions started to come up. Mm-hmm. When we were just on Soul Train, we were just on 106 in Park. Our record was on the Billboard charts, and we were touring on a Motown Lounge tour, and then everything just stopped. And I talk about this all the time. How a lot of times artists, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an artist, or anyone looking to achieve something, a lot of times on our journey to success, we're so focused on becoming successful and not focused on making sure we have the tools for the success that we're trying to achieve. And like me and many other people, me and my mom, we were so focused on success. First of all, I didn't even have the mental capacity to handle success. Even now, to take a fall, no way. We weren't prepared. I wasn't prepared to handle that type of fall, especially growing up in the inner cities of East Baltimore and not coming from a family who pretty much came from the struggle. And going from the struggle to, living in L.A. and traveling and living in New York City, that was a lot for an 18-year-old.
So I'm so happy that you can kind of, break down this wall of perception, KD, because I think that when we see those individuals, those who are in front of us, those who are in the limelight and all of those things, there's a tendency, justifiably, there's a tendency to believe that all is going well. And then, like you said, when you hit those bumps in the roads, when you get those pauses and that level of momentum, whether it's your career, whether it's your fame and all of those things, like we don't hear about those stories after. We don't hear about what that person may have experienced and everything. Do you think it's time for us to have some very real conversations to kind of open up the doors more to show people that at the end of the day, you're an individual trying to deal with all of these changes and these nuances in your life just like anybody else would, and that sometimes you don't have it all together as many people would want, as many people would want to believe?
No, definitely. I think one of the biggest problems is, especially in the business that I was in, and just I think in life in general, I think in terms of whenever you have an opportunity or you're looking to achieve something, I think people overlook one of the most important things, and that's your mind. That's your mental health. Even in the entertainment business, they treat people like just a product. They're not really concerned about your emotional and your personal well-being because you're packaged to be sold. And a lot of people may not realize it, but it's not like you go from being a person to being a product. And products, when you're talking about a product, there's no emotions attached to it. The problem with that is the product is an actual person who has emotions, who has feelings, who has a story, who comes from different backgrounds. So most of the time people overlook these things because we get so caught up into the bottom line, and that's the product, that what people want, the product. And definitely I think that we need to start to incorporate a mental health piece. And I actually think in terms of exactly what's going on right now with education, they're dumping a lot of money into education, but I think that we need to slow it down a little bit and focus on dumping some of that money into mental health, getting these kids, making sure these kids are mentally healthy, making sure that they have the tools to be able to handle these changes that's taking place, and not so much just focus on, okay, we got to get the kids back in school, we got to do this. No, we need to, first of all, evaluate these kids because they have had to endure a change over the summer to make sure that where they are mentally, and then we should move forward. I think people constantly overlook mental health all the time, yet it's the most important, because if your mind isn't right, nothing functions right.
No, you're absolutely right, dear brother. Absolutely right. Folks, if you're just tuning in to For the Culture here on WEAA, I'm talking to Clarence K.D. Mcnair, former member of the Motown recording group Prophet Jones, and he is a new author of the book, Give It One More Try, as we talk about the issue of overcoming anxiety and emotional disorders. We want to open up the phone lines for you to join us in this conversation. 410-319-8888, 410-319-8888. KD, brother, how would you... I mean, this level of anxiety, and I'm really happy that you kind of speak on why it's important for us to take a pause moment, because we're in a culture, as you know, that is, I would say, is fueled by the entertainment industry, but then it permeates into the community culture. It permeates into how we might see ourselves. I mean, the social media culture. So we're in this culture where stopping, reflecting, stopping, pausing, stopping to think is often downplayed. I'm seeing a couple of different things, and correct me if I'm wrong on this. On one end, I'm seeing that people are saying, you know what, like yourself, we really gotta put more emphasis, put more resources take a greater time to understand mental health issues, especially now, because there's so many things that are coming at people that we can't assume that everyone is okay. But then on the flip side, on the other side of it is like we also in this culture would say, you know what, just you should be strong enough to be able to handle this. You know, that if you're allowing all of these different messages and these circumstances to affect you, essentially you're weak.
And that's the problem.
Yeah. So speak to that, brother.
That's a major problem. When you look at life just as a whole, that's how we ultimately ended up in a lot of the mess that we're in. And you talk about in the community, society, and just in the world in general, because we have painted this picture that to ask for help, to work on yourself, to slow down, to take a break, to take a moment, to actually be emotional for a second is a sign of weakness. Yet every single person on this planet has a different experience, has a different journey, has gone through many different obstacles in their life personally. And yet we act like it's really simple for everyone to just fit this one little description of how we should be as people, not knowing what individually what everyone has had to endure in their life. And I actually experienced that as an artist. You know, growing up in the inner city, dealing with some of the challenges that I had to deal with growing up in East Baltimore, and then being a recording artist where I would be on the road and we would be on stage. I would be entertaining, but when I would get off the stage, I still would have to deal with a lot of the realities that haunted me, whether mentally or just whether dealing with family or whatever pressures and things that I was dealing with internally. And one thing I learned from that experience is if you continue to be this super strong person who never seeks help, who never slows down, takes a moment to work on themselves or try to get the help that you need, eventually you'll break. And when you look at society, we're dealing with a lot of broken people. And when you are a broken person, you break everything around you.
Woo. So it's like hurt people hurt people.
It's worse than hurt people, because when you're not aware, because society is telling you that, hey, it's not normal for you to appear to be weak, you don't even know that you're hurting people. You just think it's a way of life because you think that to stay strong is you showing people that you've overcome your obstacles, but yet you cry inside. It should be the other way around, to get help, to let people become vulnerable. That actually heals the community, and that actually heals the culture. When you look at the hip-hop culture before COVID, before all of these things happened, you look at the world, you look at social media, everybody's perfect. Everybody got a perfect life. Everybody is talking about success. But the reality is the average person, no one that I know, I never met a person with a perfect life. You can have a perfect Instagram page, but I don't know any perfect people. And the problem with that is we created a society that way before COVID, people who feel like being perfect, having this perfect image and being able to handle every single thing is like, it's almost like a status symbol or something.
But so it leads me to ask you this, brother. When we say that you're a strong person, because we talk about a lot of people being strong. I know there's some sisters who say, you know what, I'm tired of black women being described as strong, as if we don't have, as if we can't be vulnerable, as if we can't show a softer side of who we are. Black men, we are already, that narrative is already a part of us, like, staying strong. But I think that there needs to be some clarity around what it means to be strong versus what it means to, say, be authentic.
Definitely.
Okay.
It's these kind of topics, it hits me right in my soul, because for so many years I fell into a lot of these traps, putting up an image, trying to present myself in a way of being strong. And internally I was suffering. One of the things that inspired me to write this book, Give It One More Try, is doing my transition from artist to just getting back into society. So many times I had to tell myself not to give up. People would see me smile, I would come around, but internally I was suffering. And me suffering internally, eventually it started to hit me on the outward, where I started having all this anxiety, I started having panic, I started having headaches and heart palpitations, and in and out of the ER, and all of these things just started happening to me. And years later, after getting help and going to therapists and just working on myself and reading and just, coming face to face with myself, just being honest with myself, what I learned was all of those years of me holding all of these things inside. I got to a breaking point where I had no more, I couldn't handle anything else. And what happens is your body, no matter who you are, eventually your body will start to give in. You could smile, you could put up a wall, but you can't escape the human body experience because eventually it'll catch up to you.
Folks, if you tuned in, we're talking to Clarence K.D. Mcnair, who is a former Motown recording artist. He was with the group Prophet Jones, but also he has now transitioned into being an author, as he is putting out his first book, Give It One More Try, talking about overcoming anxiety and emotional disorders. I would love to hear what you have to say. Join us in the conversation at 410-319-8888, 410-319-8888. Brother African, talk to me, sir. What's your take on this?
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
I happen to be a musician from Druid Hill Park. We played the drums.
Fantastic.
But I want to ask the brother that, it could be, like, I'm a vegetarian. It could be your diet. All that causes tension and all them negative energy, right? But the last thing I want to ask you, you a singer? Are you a singer?
Yes.
Let me see what you got.
Oh, my God.
For a minute. Come on now, brother. Come on now, brother. Keep it real. You from Motown, too?
Yeah, he was Motown. Let me do this. I don't want to put the man on the spot because I know some artists.
Farajii. Come on now, Farajii.
Well, we got to respect.
Brother.
Wait a minute. Hold on, Brother African. We just got to respect Brother KD. I don't know. We didn't ask him to sing. So that would totally be up to him. But I think in speaking to your question, though, I think that's a good question.
Vegetarian.
In terms of your food choices.
Yeah.
All right, Brother KD, talk to us. Thank you, Brother African. We appreciate you. KD, talk to us. How does that we know as the type of black folks that we are in terms of our ancestor and the connections that we have with the rest of nature. Talk to us a little bit about food choices and has that been a part of your kind of like recovery plan for overcoming anxiety?
Yes, definitely. In my book, Give It One More Try, it's interesting that he brought that up. I talk about how I changed a total, from my dieting and just me becoming one with nature. Like I have developed every single day. I take walks. I try to exercise as much as possible. And I cut out a lot of things that was in my diet that was actually making the anxiety worse.
What were some of the things? Can you share?
You have your basic things like chips and a lot of unnecessary snacks. And, I got into eating a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, and cooking. I'm like a big olive oil fan. Cooking my foods in olive oil and, a lot of smoothies and different, like pineapples, a lot of blueberries and things like that. But more importantly, just taking a moment to every single morning, I think is important for everyone to take some time to themselves and just to kind of get themselves together. And, but yeah, food was definitely a big part of this. But honestly, the other part of this, a lot of people say food and anxiety. Yeah, that's one part. But a lot of things are deep rooted. You talk about trauma. Mm-hmm. You can have a great diet. You can be vegetarian. You can have the best diet in the world. But that doesn't necessarily stop anxiety. You have to dig deep and get to the root of what is the foundation of the anxiety. Because you can have a healthy diet, but you still have not dealt with that foundation. And for me, my anxiety started very early on, at the age of around 6 when my father ended up going to prison. And that was a rough time for me and my sister and my mother. So that was a foundation for my anxiety. So whether I was vegan, I ate fish every single day, I would have a great diet, but it would not resolve the issue of anxiety. So it's a collaboration. You have to definitely get your diet right. You have to get your physical right, your mind right, and your spirit right. And they all work hand in hand together. And what I've experienced is working with all of these different parts of me got me to where I am right now.
And I think it's important, brother, that we recognize that there have been traumatic experiences in our lives that
yes,
we have gone through and may not have really dealt with. You know what I'm saying? And oftentimes, again, going back to the culture is, like, I'm still here, I'm good, quote unquote, versus saying, you know what, that really did affect me in a very negative way. That did affect me. I mean, it's important. I was reading one time about just in terms of illnesses, and it said the best or one of the most important steps of overcoming an illness is to first identify when that situation started, identifying, like putting that illness in its proper context. Because, like you said, you could be having anxiety. If, for example, if you had experience of being on the playground and you hearing gunshots, and then you wind up seeing a body of another child on that playground, then that means that experience can be carried with you throughout the rest of your life, where you say something like to your children, they be like, "Mommy, Daddy, can I go to the playground?" No, we don't go to the playground.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? Or a situation where you might hear a sound and it might automatically take you back into that moment where, oh my gosh, that sounded like a gunshot. So your body responds in that way. You might drop to the floor, your body gets tense, and all of those things. So it's important that we kind of do that internal work of digging deep into that. So I'm so happy that you said that you recognize that at 6 or 7 years old, as a young boy, and I have a 7-year-old son, so I can only imagine what that experience has been like to see your father going through that.
Definitely, and just like the young, the brother who called, the musician, you got to look at this. A lot of times we hide behind something, and music and my talent would allow me to hide. There was so many different traumatic things that happened when I was young, and luckily I had music. Music was my outlet. I vented through music. And the problem with that, a lot of times, and you see a lot of end up turning to drugs, a lot of times because they still have those internal issues. It's just that the fame covers it up. And when I lost my record deal, man, all of those issues and problems, as long as I was on that stage, as long as I was traveling, as long as everything was great, I was fine. Because I didn't have time to pay attention to anything because there was so much exciting things going on. I was able to just cover up everything. Once all of that was gone and I came back down to reality, that's when everything started.
Hey, Katie, we're going to take a final pause right here. Then we got more folks that are checking in. But, folks, you're tuned into Mr. Katie Mcnair, formerly of the group Prophet Jones. But more importantly, he is the author of the new book, Give It One More Try. We're talking about overcoming anxiety and emotional disorders. Join us in the conversation, 410-319-8888. And stay tuned. We got more conversations with KD on the other side. Stay tuned. You're checked into For the Culture here on WEAA 88.9 FM. Absolutely the voice of the community. We'll be right back.
I do this for my culture, 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 culture.
Peace and welcome back to For the Culture here on WEAA 88.9 FM and WEAA.org. Absolutely the voice of the community. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for checking in and being with us this evening. We are having a great conversation with Katie Mcnair, the new author of the book, Give It One More Try, talking about anxiety and emotional disorders. He is a former Motown recording artist and sharing his experience and life in Baltimore. More importantly, how he has been on the journey to become more at peace with himself and dealing with some of his internal issues, doing the great internal work. And so we are happy to have him joining us on air tonight to share these experiences, some of the lessons that he's learned. And you can find it in his new book, Give It One More Try. Let's go back to the phones and hear what you got to say. 410-319-8888. We got Connell checking in from Baltimore. Connell, thank you so much for checking in. What's your question or your comment?
Yes, enjoying the conversations, brothers.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of Motown, man. That shaped my whole life. You know, listening to the Motown sounds. Come on, man. That's history right there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, man. So, going deep, you brothers talk about going deep, dealing with an oppressive society. We have to rely on a built-in survival kit that has helped us to go through this world of oppression. You know, the idea that people are created in harmony with the rhythms of nature and that free expression is tantamount to spiritual and mental health.
Yes.
What do you have to say about that, my brother?
Hey, Connell, I appreciate you. That's I like that a lot. I definitely like that a lot. KD?
No, that was amazing. I will say this. When one thing I really noticed when he talks about just being in harmony and expression, when you look at, let's say, crime in the inner cities, you have a lot of young guys, young girls who have been deprived of expression. When I was coming up, at least we had more local talent shows. We had all these recreation centers. The city was more involved in expression. Now we have a cell phone. Where the kids don't go in the back of the alley and do the skelly tops and any of those things that we had growing up. So when you look at the times that we're living in now, there's a big lack of expression. And in my book, I talk about after my music career, I stopped expressing myself. So a lot of times what happens is if you internalize those gifts, if you internalize those special gifts and you're not able to express it, when we grew up, we had dance groups at least. You had marching bands. You had all of these different things going on around us that put us in a position to express ourselves. We had all of these different things going on. When you take that away from a person, the ability to express, because through expression, you can connect spiritually. Dancing is spiritual.
Absolutely.
Singing is spiritual.
Yes, sir.
Social interaction is spiritual. So when you take all of those things away from people, you oppress them because you block their ability to be expressive.
So it's almost sounds like one of the another solution for anxiety is to and even some level, and we got to talk about emotional disorders, but is to give a person an opportunity to express themselves. They have to have an outlet. Yes,
that's very, very important. You have to. You have to have an outlet. It's a combination. You have to have an outlet, and these young people, they don't really have a lot of outlets. I mean, their outlet. How is holding a handheld device in your hand and getting some adrenaline off the likes on your pictures and looking at videos on your iPhone? How is that a form of expression? That's not possible. To express yourself means you have to release. You have to move. You have to interact. I could sit in a chair and hold my cell phone and not move one bit. How do you express yourself if you're not in a position or an environment to interact with other people of like minds and those type of things? So during this journey, I focused on the things that I really love to do, and sometimes I would just put some music on and dance by myself. Man.
No, I hear you, brother. You laughing, Katie?
Yeah.
You laughing, brother?
Yeah.
I sing in the shower.
Yes, definitely. Sometimes you gotta put some music on and dance to yourself. Sometimes you gotta do some things, just to get in those elements of expressions. And when you talk about our culture, we are expressive people. When you study the history of our community and where we come from, we do everything through celebration and praise and worship and dance. And it's in our blood. So when those things aren't put in the front and it's replaced with technology, that is one of the reasons why we have so many problems right now, so much suicide. The suicide rates are high. The depression rates are high. Because the kids aren't expressing themselves anymore. They're not releasing. They're not interacting. They're not dancing. When I was young, you danced, you played, you did cartwheels. These kids are on their video games and their cell phones.
And you know what? And I think the big thing, Katie, is that if you're not putting yourself in a position to create, which is another, which is a major part of it, because like you mentioned, our ability to create, having that skill, that talent, that is tantamount. I mean, that's a part of who black folks are.
Definitely. 100%.
Absolutely. Let's go back to the phone line, see what folks have to say. We have Kalani checking in from Baltimore.
Hello, how you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. How you doing, dear brother?
Good, doing fairly well, thank you.
Good. What's your question?
Right, good conversation. I'm being enlightened sitting here listening to the conversation.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
It's really in my spirit that I think that hasn't been touched on, and that's the fact that when we were created to have a soul. When God breathed into man, he said, let us have a soul. We became a living soul. As a result of that, we have three entities within that soul: the mind, will, and emotion. The emotional side of man is a necessity, because when you enclose that part of yourself, you oppress your ability to show forth your talents. A lot of our young men are exploding because they don't share their emotions. They're scared to cry because their daddy told them that men don't do that. So we need to consider the fact that if God created man to have a soul, then why would he give us a soul if we weren't supposed to be emotional? I'll just put that on the table and just...
No, I appreciate that, Kalani. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, brother, for checking in. And I would totally agree with that because, and I think, Katie, you've been saying it throughout the course of our talk that, we have to make a conscious decision to take back our minds, our bodies, our spirits, because it's not going to be something that's advocated in the culture that we're all living in at this point. We have to make a conscious decision. I'm looking at I just want to share this very quickly, where The Root, they did a piece on this situation, on this very issue back in May of 2019, and they found that they were talking about the suicide among black children are at a crisis level. This was back in May of 2019. But one of the things that was done as part of this study that the Congressional Black Caucus did at that time, Representative Karen Bass said this: we can no longer stand aside and watch as the youth in our community continue to struggle with depression, traumatic stress, or anxiety. Far too often, the pain that African Americans experience is either overlooked or dismissed. That has to end today. My question to you, dear brother, is, considering that, what are some of the things? I mean, of course, you had laid out your personal story, but do you have any resources or other recommendations you could provide on getting us into a better space to encourage parents of black children, to encourage adults who may be feeling some of the anxiety and emotional burden of this moment right now. What can you offer, dear brother?
Well, the first thing I want to say is just from a personal experience, we have to, as parents, we have to get involved as it relates to our children. I got a call a couple of weeks ago from my daughter, who it blew me away. I got to be honest. She mentioned that she wanted to start her own online boutique, and she had no clue when she mentioned that to me. Like, I had like chills go through my body. She's only 16, just to see where her mind is. Just thinking entrepreneurship at an early age, and that phone call right there, it just gave me a feeling of happiness. I think what's happening right now is the lack of involvement. Unfortunately, we do live in a world, we live in a society where people forget that the children really are the future. And when you're not involved, being involved is more than just providing. Being involved is listening. When listening to these children, listening to their ideas, and really taking their wants and their needs and some of their dreams, taking it serious. And hey, sometimes all these kids need is for someone to say, okay, give it a try. You have a lot of kids where they're in situations where maybe a parent or someone that they look up to may discourage them from pursuing something that they really want to do. Maybe they don't have someone around them to encourage them that, hey, you can be great, or it's just, okay, if you want to do this, give it a try. And then a lot of kids get frustrated because they feel that a lot of these suicides are young people who feel that they cannot talk with anyone. The communication, that's a major thing in communicating. If I do not give out any advice, communication is a medicine within itself. And in my book, Give It One More Try, there are tons of information on what we can do to help move forward as a culture, individually, and what us parents can do to be better for our kids. Like I say, when my daughter, shout out to Amaria, my daughter, when she reached out to me, that was a sign that I was doing something right. And I think it's time that us as parents, that we pay attention to things like that. When your child reach out, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. And right now, me and her mom are co-parenting. She sees us communicating together, working together to try to give her the best that we possibly can and to support her as much as we possibly can, meaning we're involved. We have communication. And just trying to motivate and inspire her that, hey, it's anything is possible. And I think a lot of these young children and people, and just people in life, people give up and get frustrated because they just feel like, hey, it's just not even possible for me to have a better life, for me to get past this situation that I'm in, for me to overcome these obstacles, for me to overcome these challenges, for me to see life on the other side. And when you have it in your mind that it's not possible, that puts you in a position where now you have no hope.
Yep.
And when you have no hope, you have no reason to move forward.
Yep. Hey, KD, brother, I'm right there with you. It's interesting because just today, actually, I was talking to my 7-year-old son, and he was telling me about, how when he gets upset about something, what he tend to do, he's like, Dad, when I get upset, when stuff bothers me, I feel this way, or I start to respond this way. And I took note of that. And I told him, I said, son, for you to be 7 years old and for you to be able to identify how you feel is one thing. I said, that's fantastic. But then for you to say, Dad, what do you think I should do? He asked me, what do you think I should do when I get upset? And I told him, the positive ways of handling anger and then the negative ways of handling anger. And so he really listened. I could tell he really listened. And I was just thinking to myself, just like your daughter made send chills. I mean, those are the little moments, brother, that when we hear our children, we just like, man, that's it. Because at the end of the day, KD, all I'm trying to do is raise a decent human being. I don't care about what profession you go into. I just want you to be a decent human being. That's it. I want you to know who you are as a black boy. As I have a daughter too, so I want you to know who your identity, your history, your culture. But at the end of the day, I just want you to be a decent human being, just to have some feelings, just to have some remorse, just to have compassion, and I just want you to be a human being, brother. And so that means a lot to me. That means a lot. Katie, I gotta stop it right here, brother. Real quick, how can people get a copy of your book and keep up with the work that you're doing?
Well, first of all, thank you once again. My book is available. Give It One More Try is available on Amazon. It's online at Target. It's online at Walmart. It's online at Barnes & Nobles. It's actually in Urban bookstore. And it's a Kindle. It's an audible book. It's pretty much everywhere.
There it is. And this is a great conversation starter and a great opportunity to continue the conversation, at least, about mental health, overcoming anxiety, dealing with emotional disorder through the eyes and lens of a young brother who went through some things but now is on the path of healing and recovery. Clarence K.D. Mcnair, we appreciate you, brother, and thank you so much. We got to have you back on again.
Hey, this is another home for me. No, thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being so good for the culture.